Hey, thanks so much for joining me. I'm Dave Jacobson, and in this video I'm going to be going over how to produce color managed renders using QueueMaster. I've got some footage that was shot on the Arri Alexa. It looks pretty flat, and that's because it was shot with a log-C profile. I'll be using color management in After Effects to make the image display as expected while I'm comping, and then we'll reapply the log-C profile when it's time to render. So let's start by dragging our footage into the project panel in After Effects. I'm going to place these inside of a folder to keep them separated. And before I can apply the color management to these clips, I actually need to go into my project settings first and adjust some settings. First, I'm going to change the depth to 32 bits per channel. I'm going to change the working space to sRGB. And then I'm going to check the linearize working space option. Doing all this is going to give me the best comping results possible. Now I'm going to hit OK. Now I can actually adjust the interpretation settings. So I'm going to click on my first piece of footage right here. I'm going to go to Interpret Footage, Main. And then I'm going to go over to the Color Management tab, and I'm going to adjust the Assign Profile option. I'm going to select Universal Camera Film Printing Density. This profile is very close to the log-C profile that Alexa is using. So now when I look at my footage, I can see that it looks normal and not so washed out. To save time, I'm going to just copy and paste the interpretation settings now. I'm going to click on Remember Interpretation, and then I'm going to highlight all my other footage, and I'm going to apply the interpretation. So that saved me a bunch of steps. Now I'm going to make comps out of all these clips. Perfect. And I'll put these in their own folder. Okay, now the footage looks as expected, so we can do all of our comping. Let's focus on how we're going to render this back out using QueueMaster. When I work with Alexa footage, I typically render it back out two ways. I need to reapply the log-C profile so that it matches all the other footage my editor is working with. But I also want to produce a version with an sRGB profile for my own reference. I can just have QueueMaster set up two output modules in my render queue with the proper color management for each one. So let's go down to QueueMaster, and I'm going to be using the Aqua label to do my Arri Alexa settings. I've already labeled it, so now we need to set up all the settings. First, I'm going to add a second output module because I'm going to need two. I'm going to enable both of them. I've made a render settings template called Best 32-bit Entire Timeline, but there's really nothing special about it. I just want to make sure that I'm rendering out 32-bit. As long as your project's set at 32-bit and you use best settings, you'll be fine. The next thing I've done is I've actually created a couple different templates. These are all my output module templates, and I created a couple for the Arri Alexa. Let's jump into my templates and take a look. So if I go to Arri Alexa, sRGB, it's pretty simple. We'll be rendering out Apple ProRes 422 proxy. I'm not using any alpha. And then over in color management, the output profile is sRGB. So this one's going to be for my reference. Now let's look at the other one. This one's slightly different. This one's Apple ProRes 4x4. And again, there's no alpha. And then in my color management, I'm using the Universal Camera Film Printing Density profile again. Except what it's doing this time is it's actually reversing the profile. So when it goes back out, it's going to look like log-C again, which is perfect. So let's apply these two profiles now in QueueMaster. I'm going to do the sRGB one first, and then I'm going to set up my file path settings. If I go back over here, I know that I want the renders to go into my renders folder, and then I actually want each profile to go into its own folder. So I'm going to use a relative file path, and then I need to set the parent folder value to 1. That's because my AEP lives inside of this AE folder. I don't want my renders to go in there. I want it to go to this renders folder. So I'm telling it to go up a level first. And then it's going to go into my renders folder now. And then on top of that, it needs to go into an sRGB folder. Perfect. And then I like to use versioning. So I'm going to add a space to the suffix. That's going to separate the comp name and the version. And I'll have a 2-digit version number. Now what I want to do is just copy these settings and paste it to the output module below and just change a couple of things. I'm going to use the Arri Alexa profile, the Universal Camera Film Printing Density. This is all perfect. I just need to change the output folder. We'll call this log-C, and now I'm done. I'm going to mark all of these comps Arri Alexa using my quick label. There it is. And then now I can drag these into my render queue. I'll hit Prep Queue, and QueueMaster is going to work its way through and set up all these renders. That's perfect. And now I look in my Finder, and I've got my log-C and my sRGB folder. Let's go ahead and render everything out. Okay, the rendering's done. If I go into my Finder, I can see that all my shots have rendered out. Let me look at my first one, and I can see that it's nice and flat. It's log C profile again. And then I've got my sRGB version of that. So as you can see, we've successfully rendered all the QuickTimes using color management. I can send the finished shots back to my editor, and I've got my sRGB references in case I want to have a look later without opening up After Effects. That about does it for this tutorial. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions.